Welcome to the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Join us each week as we sit down with the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management and author of Your Fiscal Physical, Ryan Nelson. Tune in to gain valuable insights and practical tips as we simplify complex financial concepts into digestible lessons. From budgeting to retirement planning, this podcast is your go-to resource for mastering financial literacy.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Fiscal Physical Podcast. My name is Aaron. I am joined by Ryan Nelson, founder of Alchemy Wealth Management. And Ryan, before we get started today, this is our 60th episode. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel good. That's exciting.
Yeah, I feel like 60 is a good number. 50 was cool. When we got to 10, I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And we're still doing this as well. So I think it's, celebrating those little wins for sure. So happy 60th, if you will.
Thank you.
At the time I turn 60,
well.
I'll be thinking about withdrawing that Roth.
That's right.
Maybe. We'll see. But anyway, I'm super excited about this episode here because we have a listener question for us here. We had one of our listeners sent in a question that kind of builds on some other things that we've talked about previously on the podcast. But how we're going to structure this is we're going to go ahead and listen to this question. That's the thing you guys will hear next, and then Ryan will break it down, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll just go from there. So anything to add before we start that, though, Ryan?
No, that sounds great to me.
Awesome. So everybody hang tight, listen up. We'll be right back.
The Fiscal Physical Podcast. Thank you guys so much for taking my question. This is in regards to a previous episode number 43, building your credit, mastering your credit. Ryan, Aaron, thank you so much for you guys touching on this, but I wanted to ask a question regarding, credit. And I'll keep it short and sweet for you boys. What are the effects of credit checks on your credit, and why is it affected in those ways? Appreciate all the knowledge you guys are dropping on us. Keep doing what you're doing. We really appreciate it out here. Peace.
Thank you so much for that, Jeremiah. Appreciate the kind words as well. And Ryan, I'm gonna turn this one over to you to talk about credit. I feel like is what Jer was kind of breaking down there for us here. So as you mentioned, we've covered it in a previous episode, but this one is about specifically the impact of credit checks and what they have. So what do you got for the man?
Yeah, let's do it. So first, there's two different types of credit checks. So there are what we call soft inquiries and hard inquiries. So these would affect your credit differently. Really, a soft inquiry isn't going to affect your credit at all. So if somebody wants to run a soft inquiry on your credit, it's not going to affect you at all. If somebody wants to run a hard inquiry on your credit, now there's more nuance to that. I can walk through how that could affect your credit. So let's dive into that. But first, so sometimes I've had credit cards. Most credit cards, like if you're applying for a credit card, most of the time when you're getting a credit check, it's somebody's checking your credit, basically credit worthiness, because you're about to get a loan. So maybe you're getting a new house, they're going to run a credit check. You're getting a new car, you're going to get a credit check. You're applying for a new credit card, you're going to get a credit check, right? And so I have had credit cards do soft inquiries. Mm-hmm. I've had other credit cards do hard inquiries. It seems like most do hard inquiries, but it's something to ask. Like you could call the credit card provider and say, hey, I see you're going to do a credit check. Is this a soft inquiry or a hard inquiry? If it's a soft inquiry, you're good to go. If it's a hard inquiry, let's talk about how that would affect you. So first, I think I might have mentioned this app last the episode that Jeremiah was alluding to when we talked about credit. But so it's an app called Credit Karma. It's a pretty cool little app. It's owned by Intuit now, and you can use it to learn a lot about your credit. I got it pulled up here in front of me, and I will tell you, it's sort of I'm not a huge fan of I feel like it's trying to sell you a bunch of credit cards now. But if you can sort through all the ads, it's a free app. So if you can sort through all the ads, there's actually a lot of information you can glean, and you can do a pretty good job of educating yourself about your credit. Again, just be wary of maybe some of these ads, right?
Sure. Kind of like when you're listening to this Fiscal Physical podcast, you're probably just overwhelmed.
Riddled with ads.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we need to get some.
Right, yeah, we should.
Yeah. If anybody wants to sponsor us.
Yeah, let us know.
So let's look at an example. So let's say there's an individual and they have a $10,000 credit. So they have, I'm going to make this way simple. So let's just pretend they just have like one credit card. It has a $10,000 credit limit on it. And right now they have $1,000 on it. So they've spent $1,000 of the $10,000 limit. And let's say they've had that credit card for 10 years, right? So pretty simple. This person has 10 years, a credit card that's 10 years old, a $10,000 limit, and they've spent $1,000 on this, right? Now, so I'm going to go a little deeper maybe than Jeremiah was originally asking. The effect to address his question directly, the effect of the inquiry, if it's hard, is negative. But there's lots of different factors that go into your credit factor. So there's payment history, credit card usage, derogatory marks, credit age, total accounts, hard inquiries. That's the one we mentioned. And the nice thing about Credit Karma is you can see what impact these have. So payment history has a high impact on your credit score. Credit card usage has a high impact on your credit score. Derogatory marks has a high impact on your credit score. Credit age, that one only has a medium impact on your credit score. Total accounts has a low impact, and hard inquiries has a low impact. So if you go get one hard inquiry, that's not necessarily the end of the world. But the other interesting thing here is if you get like Credit Karma, you can dive in and you can look at hard inquiries. So what's considered excellent is to have 0 hard inquiries. So 0 is ideal.
Right. Makes sense.
You're still in good standing if you have 1 to 2 hard inquiries. It moves to fair if you have 3 to 4 hard inquiries, and it needs like work, the red zone. It's not good if you have 5 or more hard inquiries. So it's also different. One hard inquiry isn't going to affect everybody the same. If you have 2 current hard inquiries and you get a third, that's going to affect your credit more than somebody who's going from say 3 to 4, right? It depends on how many hard inquiries you already have. So that'd be something to think about. But again, hard inquiries overall have low impact. But I mentioned earlier, most of the time somebody's running a hard inquiry on you is because you're about to either get a house, get a car, get a line of credit,
take on some
credit
debt,
card, right? They're seeing what your credit worthiness is because they're about to extend some credit to you, right? So let's look at an example. So we'll go a little deeper than Jared's initial question, and hopefully this will give him more context. So let's assume that Jeremiah is wondering about getting a new credit card. So we have this hypothetical person, $10,000 credit limit. They have $1,000 on the credit card. It's 10 years old. Now this hypothetical person is considering getting a new credit card. He calls the company. They tell him, hey, this is going to be a hard inquiry. So he says, okay, I know that's not good. I'm going to go from 0 inquiries up to 1 inquiry. So that's going to negatively impact. It's going to have a low impact, but it's going to negatively impact my credit. Is that the only impact? No. So what that's also going to do is his credit utilization is going to change. So if this person gets a new credit card, let's say it's another $10,000 credit card. They were originally using $1,000 of their $10,000 limit. So they were using 10% of their credit card. So their credit utilization would have been 10%. Now they get a new $10,000 credit card. They still have the old one. So now they have a total of $20,000 available to them. They still only have $1,000 on it. Their credit utilization went from 10% down to 5%. Now it was 1,000 out of 10,000. Now it's 1,000 out of 20,000. So it went from 10% to 5%. So their credit utilization, their credit card usage actually decreased, which is good, which has a high impact on their credit. So by getting that extra credit card, it increased their overall credit basically limit, which by default decreased their credit card usage, which helped their credit and has a high impact on credit. So that's one actually benefit.
Interesting. That's a way to paint it in a beneficial way, if you will.
Yep. Another thing is there's your total accounts. And so really to have like a perfect score from a total account standpoint, you would need to have had over 21 or more total credit accounts.
Oh, wow.
And so for most people, in their 30s, 40s, and even 50s, they haven't had enough time to really open up 21 different credit accounts yet. So I think I see a lot of people who have less than 21 total accounts. And so actually opening in having more accounts is good. So the more accounts you have, the person lending you credit sees, this person has more of a track record with paying back their debt, right?
Right. And as long as you're with those accounts, you're also paying on time and such too. That also plays into it.
Exactly.
I would assume.
So this would also increase your lines of credit or your total accounts. And so again, for most people, that would actually potentially have a positive impact on their score. Again, that one has low impact. So by, say, applying for this new credit card, it may help their credit utilization, which has a high impact, and help their total accounts, which would have a low impact. So there's two kind of factors going for them, one high impact, one low impact, that could both help boost their credit score a little bit. The alternative is, it's also, we already said, there's going to be a hard inquiry there. That's going to have a low impact, but it is going to decrease their credit score, right? The other thing, though, that it's going to do is there is that average age of credit. And so this person had an average age of credit of 10 years. When they opened up their second credit card, they now had one with 10 years, one with 0 years. So their average age of credit dropped from 10 years down to 5 years. Again, the higher number, the better. So for this particular person, their average age of credit would have decreased, and that would have had a medium impact on their credit. So that would have been a negative for a medium. So you can see for this person, applying for another $10,000 credit limit, this hypothetical person, it would help them from a credit utilization standpoint, help them from a number of lines of credit standpoint, but hurt them from the hard inquiry standpoint, and hurt them from the average age of credit standpoint. So what would total happen with this person's credit? It's really hard to say.
Sure,
There's
absolutely.
there's multiple factors, a couple factors helping them, a couple factors hurting them. One thing, so it depends. Like if they apply and they only get a $3,000 credit limit, that doesn't help their credit card utilization as much as if they applied and they got a $30,000 credit limit. So, and you may not even know what your credit limit is going to be when you apply for the credit card, right?
Sure.
So it's really hard to make these informed decisions. It's really, some factors are going against you, some factors are going for you. Again, I think the best thing is like using a tool like Credit Karma or something similar. You can go on, look at your exact credit, see if you have any current hard inquiries, how that's affecting your credit, how many total accounts you have, what your credit card usage is, and what your average credit age is, and then see, okay, if I was to get a card, a new card, how would this, take some looks and start approximating how would this affect me individually. But so again, to directly answer Jeremiah's question, a hard inquiry does hurt your credit. It's probably worth doing a little due diligence and see, is it really going to be a hard inquiry or would it be a soft inquiry? A soft inquiry is not going to affect your credit. If it is a hard inquiry, though, there's a negative effect there. But again, usually when you're getting a hard inquiry, there's other variables happening elsewhere, and those will also impact your credit in other ways.
Awesome. That was super well said there, Ryan. And I think it's important too to have a resource like Credit Karma, that app or something like this. But we should probably get them on for ads. But something like that kind of easily breaks it down, so you can kind of see everything in one place. Otherwise, you're like kind of looking all over the place for it. I remember when I was like trying to figure out like my credit card utilization, and I use Credit Karma as well. But
awesome.
I was like, looking here, I was like, okay, cool. Let me log into Chase. Oh, I have this card through Wells Fargo, and like kind of doing the math on these certain things about like, well, how much, why would this affect me this much? Should I get rid of this account? What should I do in these certain areas? And like kind of have it broken down of what is a high impact, what's a low impact, what you can, and I think the ultimate, like, I think that one of the things Jeremiah might have been looking for is like, hey, how much will this impact? And it really depends. It really depends on your situation and what you're looking to do with that inquiry and where that actually leads you eventually too.
Right.
So
the one saving grace you can think is a hard inquiry has a low impact. So there's other things like missing a payment is drastically going to decrease your credit score compared to having a hard inquiry, right? The other thing is, two other quick things is, so if you're listening to this and you say, well, okay, I want a credit card, but I don't want to have all these hard inquiries. Well, what if you apply for a credit card, they do a hard inquiry and they deny you? So now you go get another credit card. Now your credit's a little worse because all of this assumption was assuming you actually got the credit card. You got the benefits of having more credit lines and decreasing your credit utilization. So there are tools out there. Actually, Credit Karma is one of them. Like, so if you can sort through all these ads, one of the tools they do have is like the percentage likelihood that you would get accepted. So Credit Karma is trying to like push these credit cards on you. But it does tell you the percentage likelihood of you getting accepted. So that's beneficial. If you're looking at a credit card and it only gives you a 5% chance of getting accepted, you maybe don't apply for that.
Yeah, maybe not.
And maybe apply to one you get 90 or 95% chance, right? So that'd be something to think about. The other quick thing I want to mention here is we just talked about sort of everything in a vacuum, like immediately. So what's the immediate repercussions of getting this hard inquiry and the extra line of credit? Another question, though, I would have is, what are the longer term implications? So now let's say you get this credit card today. how does it affect your credit? So you apply, you have a hard inquiry, you get a credit card today. How does this affect your credit 5 years from now? And so what's interesting is, so if you apply to this credit card, you had one credit card with $10,000 limit, the new credit card gives you a $10,000 limit, so you have $20,000 total limit. Well, you can reach out to those credit card companies and ask them to increase your limit. There's no hard inquiry required. And so, 5 years from now, you may have got them to increase your limit up to 30 grand, 15 grand a piece.
Sure.
And so having more credit cards available to increase those total limits could be valuable. So you can keep your credit card utilization low. Your lines of credit's going to stay the same. You now have one more line of credit, right? Your inquiry is actually going to fall off after 2 years. So if you do a hard inquiry now, it's not just going to be on your record forever.
Right.
After 2 years, it's going to drop off. So similarly, if you're looking at applying for a credit card and you're like, well, I have a hard inquiry from 1 year and 11 months ago, one more month is going to fall off. Your credit score will go up a little bit. Maybe just wait that extra month before you apply, right? Give you a little higher likelihood of getting accepted. So the hard inquiry will drop off after 2 years. Also, the average age of credit will obviously have crept up. So I said if this individual had 10 years of credit, they got a new credit card. It was 0 years. So their average age of credit was 5 years. You fast forward 5 years. Now their average age of credit is 10 years again. So now you look at this person 5 years later, their credit card utilization will probably still be lower than if they hadn't got the credit card, because their total credit limit will be higher. Their lines of credit will be +1. Their hard inquiries will have dropped back to 0. In theory, if they had 0, then got 1, it will have dropped back to 0 5 years later after the 2 years. And then their average age of credit will have recovered a little bit with time, right? That only grows just linearly with time. So somebody, that's maybe looking to build credit to buy a house 5 years from now, there's actions they could take now that maybe temporarily decrease their credit, but sets them up for having higher credit 3, 4, 5 years from now too, right? So it's something you want to look, not just as short term, also the long term as well.
Yeah, a lot of pieces to that puzzle, to say the least, when it comes to credit and what you're trying to do with it and your goals and where you want to go with it. So awesome, Ryan. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jeremiah, for sending that in as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremiah.
Really, I think that was a great one to break down as well. And we'll go ahead and take a quick pause here, but back on the other side of this, and hang tight, everybody.
And now, to put the personal in personal finance.
Welcome back, everybody. This side of the Fiscal Physical podcast. Ryan, I have a couple of trivia questions for you. They kind of build on each other, and I'm
compound on each other.
Compound, if
Excellent.
you will.
Excellent.
And I'd be curious to see how you'll do with these. So, first one is, in the United States, what is the driest state in the United States? 50 states. Which one receives the least amount
rainfall, or
least amount of rainfall per year?
The least amount of rainfall. Well,
on average per year, because the whole state is like what it is. It all goes into a state. Yeah.
You talking about measured in inches or total?
Yes, inches.
Okay. Because I was going to say it's just going to be one of the small states up in the Northeast, even though they get a lot, but it's just much less space. The driest, it's got to be Seattle or Washington, right? No, I'm just kidding. Gosh, Nevada's got to be right about there. Sort of these high desert states.
They'll get you.
I know a lot of them get a lot of monsoons.
It's an interesting question.
I'm gonna go with Utah.
Oh, it is actually the state of Nevada.
It is.
I thought that one was a layup.
I thought it might be a trick. I thought it might be a trick question.
They get on average. Oh, actually, I'll ask you that. How many inches on average do you think the state of Nevada gets in rainfall every year?
2.5.
10 inches.
Oh my goodness.
Get about 10 inches, and then that feeds into what's the second state, or the next driest state? No, okay. Arizona, actually, and it gets 12 inches of rainfall per day per year is what it ends up being, and it was just a mind blowing thing. I was like, because here in Reno, I'd say that we get a decent amount of precipitation, but you think about like the state of Nevada as it goes down,
right?
It's just a desert,
right? Well, and the further east, we get more precipitation here right off the mountains. Yeah. But the further east you go too, there's less. I think less, and then the further south you go, less too.
And it's funny. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy! Like the amount of sun that we get just in the state of Nevada too, and it was kind of mind blowing to me. But then I was like, oh, have you ever been to the Hoover Dam?
I have. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome structure.
Yeah.
And I went there when I was like 8 and then again when I was like 18, and like both times it was equally like impressive to me. I was like, oh, this is something that held up over time. However, my question to you is, how many cubic yards of concrete were used to build the Hoover Dam?
God,
I actually had to look up what cubic yards was, and then I just forgot. So anyway, how much concrete do you think went into that thing?
That's a really, really hard
It's a really
question,
tough one.
But I would say maybe, let's see. Let me get a calculator.
Yeah. Use all the resources you can. Like
the internet?
Yeah. Just Google it. Yeah, real quickly. But it was. I'll give you a hint. Maybe this will help.
I'll throw out a quick guess.
Cool.
Hintless.
Yeah.
I'll say 2.5 million.
2.5 million. Not bad. 3.25 million.
Okay.
And which is
I think it's like 100 yards thick at the bottom.
It's incredible. And so this puts it into perspective. The amount of concrete that they used could build a 2-lane highway, could pave a 2-lane highway in concrete from San Francisco to New York.
Oh, wow.
It could pave a whole 2-lane highway all the way there.
Wow.
Like, that's the amount of concrete that they used for this thing. So
incredible.
Anyway, I always think about there's things in like our state. Now, granted, the Hoover Dam's about as far away from us as you can get.
Sure, yeah.
But I always recommend as we get into, we're coming up on, relatively spring at the time that this podcast will be released, and are starting to think about spring. And like I highly recommend like checking out things to do in like the Reno area, the Las Vegas area, different attractions, different things. We got some cool stuff. Pretty dry here.
Very dry.
But definitely I like a subtle plug there to check out the different attractions, and it's pretty cool. The Hoover Dam's one where I'm like, man, that was neat. I definitely see that one again for sure. So anyway, thank you for playing, Ryan. Thank you for podcasting with me as always. I really enjoy it. And
absolutely.
Anything else you have to say this fine evening?
As always, stay the course.
Thank you for joining us for the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Until next time, happy listening. And as always, stay the course. If you have a question or topic suggestions, please email us at podcast@alchemywealth.com. If you enjoyed today's discussion, subscribe to the podcast to ensure you never miss an episode. And consider leaving us a rating and review on your favorite platform. This helps other listeners like you find the show. For more resources, you can visit Alchemy Wealth Management's website at www.alchemywealth.com or find your Fiscal Physical, the book, on Amazon. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that personal finance is just that, personal. Please don't take anything we say as advice. The preceding content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's not an offer or a solicitation, nor should it be construed or relied upon for tax, legal, or investment advice. It doesn't consider your personal financial situation or objectives and may not be suitable for you.